Probably the most interesting market that we have seen, because there's so many things that we can talk about that are very, very unusual. And we're going to talk about some really some unusual things. And I think that's probably one of the scary things in this marketplace. It's also scary because it's not quite a buyer's market or seller's market. It's really a little bit of both. And you can come up with an argument for either, and strong cases to say it's still a seller's marketplace because inventory is still low. Like, it's at 211 is the current available number. So we're going to be talking about what's available. We're going to talk about some trends. We're going to be talking about some scary things, and scary could be from the buyer side or the seller side, and some really interesting things that this market continues to bring new information. So we're going to be talking about all of that on today's YouTube show. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Thumbs up if you do like the show. You can also leave comments in the chat if you have some comments, or if you have questions, by the way, because we're getting a lot of questions on some situations we've seen recently, especially around insurance. Still plan on bringing an insurance guest on so we can talk more about that, because there's some really crazy things going on with insurance right now, with many insurers leaving the state of Florida. And we're going to talk about some solutions around that, not on today's video, but that's coming up real soon over the next couple of weeks. That's my goal, the special guest for that. And of course, I do want to bring up, I almost forgot, I do want to bring up November 12th. We are doing a really great event, and I'll bring that up in a minute, the Alzheimer's Masquerade Ball, black and white ball that we're doing in November. And so if you know someone suffering from or has suffered from Alzheimer's, it's one of those things that's really big on my heart, because it's such it's such an impactful disease, not only on the people that go through it, but also the people that are caretakers. And it is a really big concern, obviously, in our community, of course. So I'll bring that up later. But first, let's tackle this particular chart that you see here. Maybe actually bring it up. The chart I want to show you is a very interesting chart, because it is truly one of the scary things that we need to be looking at, which is the affordability factor. And this is from a national standpoint. So, when it comes to people trying to buy in our community, I wouldn't say I'm not concerned with the affordability factor here, even though prices have gone up. I still think we're pretty good value for what you get, right? Like, I think the whole total lifestyle thing here in the Villages, there's a lot that you get for the price, for the money. So I still think we're a pretty good value, even though prices have gone up dramatically over the last 2 to 3 years. And there's also several other retirement, considered to be retirement communities, 55 plus communities around us, whether they're Summer Glen or Del Webb Spruce Creek, or Stonecrest, and some other neighborhoods, Harbor Hills. It's not 55 plus, but it's a community that's relatively close, and there are a lot of retirees living there as well. So, but I don't get concerned about that. I get more concerned with the people that are buying the homes of the people that are moving here, which is obviously an indirect factor, but it is a factor nevertheless, where people that are buying homes across the country have never seen a lower affordability rate. And this has really impacted us over the last 5 to 6 months, and really taken hold over the last 5-6 months, as interest rates have come down, or actually up rather, and the demand has come down. So we're looking at the affordability, housing affordability index, which is 98.5. And the last time we saw something pretty close to that was back in 05, 06. And of course, this is an example of what people are using as, oh my gosh, there's a market crash coming. So, maybe yes, maybe no. I'm not seeing enough evidence of that, because, and we'll talk about why in a minute, but This is a concerning factor, actually pretty scary. The affordability factor at 98.5. Last time we saw that was back in 05, 06, this range. And of course, then affordability improved. So the lower the bar, the lower the affordability, the higher the bar, the higher the affordability. Of course, the affordability factor was at an all-time high back in 2011 for obvious reasons, because prices plummeted and interest rates were not incredibly low, but they're probably very similar to our point now in the 5-6 range. So that gives you a little bit of perspective there. Okay. Another thing to look at is that's a very interesting thing to look at, especially now, is the inventory being really, really low. You know, inventory being really, really low, you're talking about, 26%. Now, this is on a national basis. Let's take a look at this chart. This is the week ending September 2nd, where the same week in 2021, 26.3% increase in inventory. 2020, obviously, decrease in inventory, and then of course, right here, 42%. So it really tells us, what inventory is still low nationwide. Still nationwide, it's still pretty low. And if you want to look at the villages specifically, you start looking at, our inventory being at 211 homes on the market right now. That basically, that's still a lower number, a low-ish number. It's not historically low. We went through that earlier. But we also know that the little scary thing is that it looked like, okay, inventory was really going up, ramping up from beginning of March, ramping up, and now it's kind of plateaued and actually dropped over the last 4 to 6 weeks. So that's a little scary thing. It's like, okay, what is the market really doing? Like, what's going on? Like, it was easy to really predict what was going on last year, where inventory was doing this, going straight down, and then prices were going straight up, and interest rates were going down, and these types of things were happening. The lower interest rates, the interest rates did go down for a little bit for a 3 to 4 week period, and then obviously we saw inventory also go down. So buyer demand picked up across the country, but also buyer demand picked up here in the villages. So overall, what we're seeing is kind of a plateauing, and and I've done a lot of research on this, we're seeing a lot more similarities to 2017 versus 2022. There's a lot of similarities. The interest rate was slightly lower. We were more in the 4.5 to 5 range, slightly lower, but demand levels are very, very similar, very, very similar to 2017. But the inventory count is a lot lower now than what it was back at that point, almost double the amount. We were in the 400 mark back in the 2019, 2018 area, a lot more inventory. So that's kind of what we're seeing, and I think this is about what we're seeing now is about what we're going to expect, I think, moving forward, which is lowish inventory, but also a lot less demand than what we've seen before. So I think we're going to be setting records, and this is a little scary. So it's kind of, the scary part is the inventory is still low, but the scariest part is that the demand has gone down quite a bit. And I'd say in the villages, we've seen about 30 to 40% decrease in demand compared to last year and early part of 2022 as well. But the inventory being light and still not as many homes coming on the market, so inventory still staying low, is actually it's buoying the market. So that inventory number, which we pay attention to closely, is really a big indicator as to which way the market is going. That tells us a lot. Is the inventory going up? Is it coming down? what's happening, because that's what we saw back in 2008. We saw the inventory rise dramatically and demand also come down. And those two combinations, that's where market crash comes in. Not to say that that won't happen in 3 weeks or 3 months, and eventually maybe 3 years from now it's going to happen. But right now, the combination of inventory being low and also demand being low, like both of those are happening, we're seeing just kind of a regular move along, slowish paced marketplace, right? And another thing we can look at to kind of bear this out for the folks that have been, watching, and you can actually look at some of the videos we did last year, you can start seeing the numbers start to make a little bit more sense. So let's take a look at, the current activity. Last 7 days, new listings 22 new listings, which is really low. To my point, there's not a lot of properties coming on the market, which I think there's an opportunity from the seller standpoint to put your home on the market. From the buyer standpoint, well, since there's not a ton of demand, I mean, there is some. So let's look at the demand number, 32. That's still light. 32 under contract is still a light number, as opposed to 40 or 50 new listings, as opposed to 30 to 40 to 50. Those would be regular numbers. Now it is September. It's still really hot. It's still summer here in Florida. That's very, very normal. But these numbers here are still pretty light. The saving grace is we're seeing more demand than new listings. This flip-flops, if this flip-flops, and this is a scary thing here, if this flip-flops where we get less demand than new listings, and we see a rise and a sharp rise, kind of like what we saw the first, in second quarter of this year from, April all the way through June, sharp rises in inventory, and then really sharp decline in demand. And we see that again, that would concern me a little bit more if we see that again. But right now, very kind of normal, here we go, hum, 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 ho-hum type of market. So new listings 22, price increases 1, price decreases 30, which is down. That's also a little bit lighter as well. 5 back on the market, 31 closed. That was last 7 days, so that's the first week of September in 2022. And then you see here the rest of the numbers. So that's kind of what we're seeing the overall market take. Also want to show you, there's one more chart I want to show you that I think you might find interesting. And let's take a look at this. This is kind of the, not just taking my word for it, but somebody else's word for it. This is a chief economist from Moody's Analytics, Mark Zandi, that says, that he doesn't believe the national housing price will decline in a meaningful way. But there are some price declines across the country. And I would agree with that. I think that's, meaningful as in, 30% drop, which would be, that's basically the equivalent of a crash. But here, what we've noticed, and especially in the, in certain segments. So if you look at the, the market for, pretty much the lower end, which will be, historic section across 441, Orange Blossom side, near Spanish Springs, and then you're looking at some of the patio villas or courtyard villas. What's happening is people start to get a little bit impatient because their home is not selling in 30 to 45 or 60 days. And like, oh my gosh, they get into panic mode and they got to reduce the price. The other thing that we're seeing is in certain cases, I'm seeing, what one of my realtors calls a dump and run, getting an inheritance. We get children who inherit a property, especially, it happens a lot here in the villages for obvious reasons. And, they happen to lower the price dramatically because they want to get out of it. So I think whenever people panic, whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side, things, I don't think it's a good event. It's just like what we saw on the buyer side for 2 years. Buyers would panic and then, prices would go up. And now sellers are starting to panic a little bit because their home is not selling. If they're super motivated and they're dropping the price, that's where we're seeing the price decreasing. For the folks that don't have to sell, they're basically holding on to their property, or they're renting it out through our property management division. and they're deciding, you know what, I think I want to put it in either a short-term property management division or the long-term, depending on what they're, if they've got furniture. If you've got furniture home, short-term makes sense. If you've got, long-term, if you've got no furniture, long-term makes sense. If you have furniture, then obviously short-term makes more sense. Short-term as in, seasonal, that kind of thing. So seasonal is in typically January through, March or April. So let me share this with you. So if you have questions, let me know. Also, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. That would be absolutely great. I would love that. That means a ton to me for sure. I'm always looking at that. It's kind of like a fun game. Now that I think we're over 1,100 subscribers, which is very, very exciting. So thank you for that. I try to bring as much value as I possibly can. And most of you know this, I do this live. And obviously some of you watch this as it's recorded. But last thing I want to show you is one more thing, and that's going to be this. This is our event that's coming up. Super proud of, I want to give a shout out to Mickey Wool, who's done a great job in putting this together. She's one of our fabulous agents. The Black and White Ball, Saturday, November 12th, 6 to 9. It's a Savannah Center. Proceeds, we don't make any money on this, but in fact, we spend money to help make this happen. And it's just something I think is really, really important. The last couple of years, we've really promoted Alzheimer's research. We've actually donated recently to I know the Parrot Head Club is holding a golf tournament. I don't have that in front of me, but we are sponsoring that, and it's also for Alzheimer's research. So if you are interested in participating, it's going to be a fun event because it's a formal, it's a tux for men, and formal gown with a mask. Obviously, bring a mask that's similar to this, what you're seeing on the screen. And it's going to be a nice event. And there's not too many formal events. I can't remember the last time there was a nice formal event in the villages, but we've got a nice formal event that we're doing here November 12th. 255-5890 is the number to call if you're interested in either donating, or you want to be part of, you just want to go. Like, this is, you just want to be part of this. And I think it's going to be a nice event. We've got a couple of good special guests and some entertainment. And it'll be a good time, fun time for sure. So Saturday, November 12th, 6 to 9. That'd be great if you can participate. I can get a chance to meet many of you that will go for sure. And if you have questions, you can also contact me at 352-572-3796. And I hope everybody has a great weekend.